Hey guys, over the last couple of years, I've had loads of people ask me how they can support the show, and now you can. So if you like this show and you want to support it and you want to keep it free, head on over to everyonelovesguitar.com/support. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/support. Thanks for all you do. If you're a business owner and you want to increase your cash flow, or if you're a label or artist and you want to promote new music, then listen up. For information about advertising on Everyone Loves Guitar, including information on geographically targeted ads, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey guys, I got to tell you a quick story. I recently put in a pair of EMG pickups into my Les Paul Classic, and tinkering with electronics, wires, not my bag. That being said, a little over an hour later, I'd installed the pickups with literally no problems at all. And the quality of the sound is absolutely amazing. I put in the retroactive Fat 55s. That's a new set that they have, and that's because I wanted a vintage, British Brown sound. And these Fat 55s are modeled after the tone of the classic PAFs, which is exactly what I got. The thing I wasn't expecting is it sort of feels like my volume and tone knobs have been expanded to 20. There's like a lot more responsiveness in the volume and tone, and I could even get harmonics now at low volumes on the neck pickup, and any preconceived notions I had about installation being difficult or, there's a problem having a battery in there were totally wrong. The battery thing, it's like putting a battery in one of my kids' toys when they were little children growing up. It's just a total non-issue. And in fact, I'm going to wind up getting the Strat set next because installation for that is even easier because it comes with the pick guard and the pickup's already attached to the pick guard. And if you want to check out EMGs for yourself, now's actually a great time to do this because Rob and Allison are making a special offer available for listeners of this show only. And here it is. For a limited time, head on over to emgpickups.com, buy one or more sets of pickups, and enter ELG in the discount code section of the shopping cart. ELG, of course, for Everyone Loves Guitar. And they're going to give you 15% off, which is huge. The biggest discounts they ever give is 10%. Plus, they're going to give away $70 worth of free bonuses, including an EMG cinch bag, a pick tin, lanyard, stickers, and a t-shirt. Plus, you get a money-back guarantee if you're not 100% satisfied. Plus, not a 2-year performance guarantee on the performance of the actual pickups themselves, but a lifetime performance guarantee. And on top of everything else, you're going to get free shipping. So there's basically no risk at all here for you to try a set or two of EMG pickups. And the great thing about these pickups is, and I got 2 sets, once you install them, and by the way, there's no soldering involved at all, because I couldn't have done it if there was, quite frankly. But once you do install them, all you need to do to swap them out and put another set in is literally disconnect one wire on each pickup, and then you're done. That's it. It's kind of like putting Legos together. It's that easy. So go to emgpickups.com, enter ELG in the shopping cart for your discount code, and that's it. You get to take advantage of this offer right now. Man, this one's always a big challenge. If you want to buy or sell a home or investment property and you're here in the Tampa Bay area, in Hillsborough, Pinellas, or Pasco counties, then listen up. West Florida Real Estate is a local residential real estate broker that's helped over 250 Bay Area homeowners buy and sell their properties in the last 4 years alone. If you're looking to sell, you'll want to get their free report, The 7 Biggest Mistakes Homeowners Make When Hiring a Realtor. And if you're looking to buy a property, you definitely want to get your hands on the 21 Most Expensive Mistakes Tampa Home Buyers Make When Buying a Home. Each one of these reports is going to save you time and money. Inside, you'll discover the 7 most important things to consider when hiring a realtor, what to do if you're buying and selling a home at the same time, and the danger of choosing a realtor who agrees with everything you say. To get your hands on these free reports, head on over to westfloridarealestate.com. That's westfloridarealestate.com. The Be Fulfilled Journal helps you be more honest with yourself and with others and be more open to handling things you've avoided dealing with for years. It's a 12-week online and journal program that helps you identify and eliminate things you do that are causing you stress and live in more gratitude and joy. It was actually developed by a long-term friend of mine who got sober in 2008, and he's put together a great deal just for my listeners. You get the 300-page hardcover journal and access to the 12-week video program online, plus free shipping, plus membership in a private Facebook support group with others going through the program, plus a 5-day mini course showing you how to let go of stuff that's draining your energy, plus a 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. To start your journey and get all the bonuses, go to BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. That's BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, and I've certainly got a great guitarist to talk to today. Also, one of the nicest and very smartest guys that I've spoken to. We're with the one and only Henry Johnson out of Chicago, and I just want to thank Mimi Fox for connecting us, right? It was Mimi, I think.
It was.
Henry's, like I said, from Chicago, began playing guitar at age 12. While spending formative time in Memphis, he started playing gospel music at age 13. At 14, he was playing in R&B groups, and although his parents brought him up hearing the music of Duke Ellington, Count Basie, and Joe Williams, it wasn't until 1967 that he was formally introduced to jazz by hearing guitarist Wes Montgomery. In 1969, Henry and his family then moved back from Memphis to Chicago, where he immediately developed a reputation on the South Side as a good local jazz guitarist. And he's probably understating it when he said good in his bio. In 1976, he went on the road with organist Jack McDuff, and then he was called to work with Donny Hathaway in 1977. In 1979, he started playing with the famous, just tremendous jazz pianist Ramsey Lewis. In 1985, he started playing with Joe Williams, and his roots run deep into gospel, blues, and jazz. You're the One was Henry's recording album debut, and it got #1 status on both radio and records charts and contemporary jazz charts for 2 months, which I don't need to tell all you guys listening. It's pretty rare for someone's first recording. His album also won a 5-star rating in Downbeat and was nominated for a Grammy. His second album, Future Excursions, and third album, Never Too Much, also reached top 10. New Beginnings was his debut recording for the Heads Up International Jazz label. In addition to his solo recording projects, Henry's recorded again with Ramsey Lewis, vocalist Joe Williams and Vanessa Rubin, and saxophonist Richie Cole, amongst many others. He's performed with Nancy Wilson, Marlena Shaw, Angela Bofill, Dizzy Gillespie, the Boston Pop, Sonny Stitt, Freddie Hubbard, Grover Washington Jr., Stanley Turrentine, Dr. Billy Taylor, organist Jimmy Smith, James Moody, David Fathead Newman, and many other great jazz artists. Dude, that's like the whole Downbeat magazine greatest hits, man. Seeing the need to reinvent himself in 1999, Henry recorded a CD on board the Queen Elizabeth II called An Evening at Sea, which was really well received. In 2002, he put together a group patterned after the hard-swinging jazz groups of the 60s, using guitar, sax, organ, and drums. That group made a recording called Organic and featured legendary vocalist Nancy Wilson, who said that was one of her most intimate performances because of the personal interplay between herself and Henry Johnson. His latest group is comprised of piano, bass, and drums in a hard grooving format, which features Henry on guitar and vocals, and the band doing jazz favorites and many originals. Henry's longtime friend Billy Foster plays keyboards, and I will tell you, Henry's tone is really beautiful. You have a really unique way of bending notes, man. I've never heard anybody bend notes like you. It's really cool. I can't even articulate it, but it's really cool. And he's really, what we're going to talk about some today too, is I really like you have really good awareness over your mind. And every time I've spoken to you, we've spoken a few times, I just really was turned on by some of the things you said about believing in yourself. And if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. And you just seem to be really in touch with that. So we'll talk about that later, man. So thank you very much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
So when we first spoke, you said to me that you did spend some important years guitar-wise in Memphis, even though you are originally from and still live in Chicago right now. What prompted that move to Chicago and to Memphis, and what happened musically in Memphis?
Well, I have my grandparents and lots of cousins and stuff. I had a lot of family down in Memphis. And my mom had gotten sick in Chicago, so she went to stay with my grandmother, her mother, while my dad was working, and just to heal up. So we ended up being down there for about about 7 years or something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
And then after I was down there when Martin Luther King got shot.
Holy smokes. What was going on down there? That must have been pretty wild.
It was definitely wild. I saw his last speech because the place that he gave his speech was about 7 blocks away from my house. So
Holy
we all went
smokes.
to see his speech. And then 2 days later, that's when he got shot. And when that happened, like it just went like nuts. So there's rioting and all kinds of stuff going on. And I think my dad just says, "Okay, this is it." When there was a tank rolling down our street because they put everything on lockdown and a curfew, so people had to have written excuses to go to work. So it had gotten out of control. So as soon as all of that stuff subsided, my dad said, "Okay, we're going back to Chicago. We can't stay down here in the South. It's just too crazy."
Wow.
And so that's how we ended up back up to Chicago. But having to find a job, it was easier for him to find a job in Gary.
Gary, Indiana.
Yeah, Gary, Indiana is like almost like a suburb of Chicago. It's like 30 miles, 30 miles, 29 miles away. So it was easy for him to, find a job there in Gary because Gary is known for steel mills. And at that particular time, all the steel mills were working. So, like the unemployment rate in Gary was like 2%.
Oh my, that is nothing.
There was no way that you couldn't find a job whenever you wanted one.
Wow. It's amazing that the whole thought in 2019 of working in a steel mill, it's doesn't exist anymore pretty much, does it?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's amazing.
And, what happened was when the steel mill thing happened because they had a strike, and the companies that own the steel mill didn't want to pay the guy's pension. So they decided that, well, we're just not going to bargain with them. We're not going to do anything about the strike. So the strike went on, and it started affecting everything. It affected car manufacturers. It affected everything. So Reagan said, all right, well, we're just going to import our steel. So he opened up steel imports from Japan, which killed the steel industry in all of because Gary was a big place for steel mills, and so was Pittsburgh. All the steel mill towns in Ohio as well. All of those steel mill towns, they were built around, communities were built around those jobs. And once those mills start closing up, it starts, deteriorate the cities because people couldn't stay.
Yeah.
There was no work for them. So anyway, we moved back, and my dad, at that time, it was jobs everywhere. So my dad worked, like in Gary. And then he had a second job that he worked in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
So, that guy worked 2 jobs most of my life. That's all I can remember is like working 2 jobs all the time. So he was like a really great image for like working.
Yeah.
For what you gotta, taking care of whatever you gotta do. So that was one of the things that I learned from him. Staying consistent and always doing what you have to do to make what you want to make.
And I'm assuming that, so you going becoming a musician and having to put in all the long hours and all you need to do to be successful, do that was not a push for you. You were totally prepared for that.
It was part of my makeup.
Yeah. Right.
It was just as natural as breathing.
Yeah. That's such an asset, man. You know.
Yeah, I realized that for me, it was just fun.
But I think you can tell a lot about a person from work ethic. Like, people who have a good work ethic are dramatically, usually if you have a good work ethic, there's like, you also have a high level of integrity. I have found anyway. And then like the opposite is sometimes true. If you're lazy, maybe not so much.
Yeah, I think you're right, because if you wait for something to happen, if you sit around and wait for something to happen, you're sort of leaving stuff up to chance.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to get in the car, you're going to turn it on, and you're just going to put it in drive, and you don't know where you're going to go. You're not going to guide it. Well, to me, that's like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I agree.
If I put it in drive, then I got to have an idea of where I want to go.
Right. I'm with you.
So,
and hope is not a good strategy. I always have this hope is not, I always say hope is not a good business strategy. Hoping everything works out. You could do that, but that's not a very good strategy. You can't hope your way into success.
That's always been strange to me, probably strange to you too.
Yeah.
Because hope is something that you want to happen. Hope is not something that you make happen.
Bingo. Yeah, I'm the same as you. Yep. So when you were in Memphis, though, you had some really good teachers, if I remember correctly, and that really kind of set you on your path musically.
Yeah, my junior high school teacher was one of my biggest influences, because he actually taught me how to read music. I was in the band. I wanted to be a trumpet player, but when you sign up for band, you're limited to whatever instruments are available.
Sure.
People had gotten in the band before me, so all the trumpets was gone. So I still wanted to be in the band because I wanted to be around the music. And so I chose to play clarinet. And, I decided, well, if I'm playing clarinet, I'm going to put the time in. I might as well be the best clarinet player I can be.
There you go.
So he taught us how to read music, and I transferred that over to the guitar. But I was also introduced into classical music, Tchaikovsky and all that. I would have never known anything about those composers and their music without actually studying, like in the orchestra. So I think that all of those experiences, when you're a kid, it's just music. Either you like it or you don't like it, but you get a chance to try it out and check it out. Then you decide whether you like it or not. Because I think that at the bottom of most music is just about emotions. Now you're talking about, Tchaikovsky, who lived way a long time ago, but he still was trying to move people with his compositions. And I think that's what we're all doing with music. We're all trying to move people when they hear us play. So to me, it's all good. It's just another thing. I mean, it was always amazing to me that we only have 12 notes.
Yeah.
We have hundreds of years of music, all different kinds, with just those 12 notes. That's always been the most amazing thing to me about music. How does that work,
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. So you first heard Wes Montgomery in 1967. 2 years later, you're one of the hot Chicago jazz cats. How did that happen? Like, were you just woodshedding night and day for 2 years, or?
Yeah, well, when you're a kid, man, the only thing you got to do, you don't have to worry about paying rent or anything like that. The only thing you got to do is about going to school, keeping your grades up, and coming home and practicing, playing, hanging out with your friends and stuff like that. But still, the music was just like it was my other world. It was my escape to another world. And hours and hours would go by before I even realized, when my mom would say, like, hey, it's time for you to come and have dinner. I wouldn't even know. I would be totally in another world.
Just playing guitar.
Yeah, when I was like 14 and I was in the R&B band, the songs that we were going to learn, I didn't read guitar music because I was still learning how to read on the guitar. But we didn't do that when we rehearsed. everybody took the record home, everybody learned their part, and they came back to rehearsal and played their part. There was no charts. We didn't, like nowadays, everybody's got a fake book and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have that. When you came to the rehearsal, you were expected to know your part. And it was, there was no music written down for you to play your part. You had to know it. So when we performed, we never used any music or anything. Like everybody all knew the songs. And so like I would just take, they would say, okay, here's the songs that we're going to learn, for next week. And I would just grab a stack of 45s because, our record player was a 45. I just grab a stack of 45s like that, set it on the end. I just went through all of them. Even though we were only playing the songs on the A side, I would go over to the B side and learn that too. And just because I was already doing it anyway, so it was fun. So I just did it.
Okay, so what guitar were you playing back then as a young teen?
Back then I was playing a Fender Telecaster.
Really?
Yeah, that was my first guitar was a Fender Telecaster.
You still have it?
I don't have that one, but I still love the sound of them. And there's a Fender Telecaster sounds a certain way, and there's certain music that is like indicative of it. So if you're listening to Sam and Dave Soul Man, that's Steve Cropper, and Steve Cropper was like a telly guy.
Yeah.
And so he was like one of the guys I copied, off of recordings and stuff like that, because he was on the Otis Redding stuff. It was, that was the stuff that I grew up with. And Steve Cropper was like, that sound he got was the sound of a Telecaster.
He's still playing. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is. And, it's like, this is a really funny story. When I was at that particular time, Stax Records was where they recorded. Stax Record was 3 blocks from the church that I went to.
In Chicago?
So, no, in Memphis.
Oh, Memphis. Okay.
And so on Sundays afternoons after church was over with me and my friends, we would get together and we would go back down there to Stax Records and sit in back of where the parking lot was. And those guys would be doing sessions in there, and they couldn't, the engineer wouldn't let them smoke in there. So they would come out and open the door, and on the break, they would be out in the parking lot smoking cigarettes and stuff like that. So we used to hear them mixing because they had the door open, and the guys would be out in the parking lot while they were in there mixing, and we could hear, and, I could see Steve Cropper and stuff like that. So I told him, later on, years later, I was in New York and I was playing at some place in New York, and he came down to see Ramsey Lewis. He came backstage because what was the guy who played keyboards for David Letterman's show?
I don't know his name. I don't even know the.
You know who he is, but he brought Steve.
Paul Schaefer.
Paul Schaefer is a big Ramsey Lewis fan, so he came down to see Ramsey, and he brought Steve Cropper backstage. And I, because meeting him for the first time as an adult, you're meeting him for the first time. And, after he, was telling me, oh, man, you really sound great, blah, 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 And I just told him, I said, remember when you used to be doing records at Stax Records? I said, you remember those kids that used to be back all of the time on the Sundays? I said, I was one of those kids. I told him that. He was like laughing and stuff like that.
That's really cool.
Actually remember it because, they were doing those recording sessions at Stax Records.
That's nice, man. Hey, I'm going to ask you about some of the artists you've worked with. If you could tell me how you got the gig and if there's a cool or interesting story about working with them.
Okay.
Start with Jack McDuff.
Well, Jack McDuff had a guitarist with him when I went to see him one time. He had a guitarist with him who was a friend of mine, but he was an excellent guitar player. And his girlfriend worked in my band. So my first band I had, it was just bass, drums, guitar, and a vocalist. And the vocalist was his girlfriend.
Okay.
So anyway, she and I went down to see Jack one night, and the guitar player, her boyfriend, he was just lighting the stage up. He was a fantastic guitar player, and people know him. His name was Billy Rogers. And anyway, Billy had decided that he was going to leave Jack and he had gotten a call from George Shearing. And so he just decided, okay, well, he told Jack, he says, hey, man, I'm gonna be leaving at the end of the month, so if you need another guitar player, you should talk to this guy. And he told him I was in the audience. And he said, okay. And so he asked me, to come and sit in with him. Like on the spur of the moment. And I said, okay, all right, sure. So Billy let me use his guitar. And he said, well, what do you want to play? I said, I know all of your music, so you can play like you were always going to play anyway. So he started calling. He called one song, and I knew the guitar part on it, so we played it right along with the saxophone player. So he was like totally freaked out that I knew his music.
Because you used to listen. That was what you were listening to.
Yeah, I was listening to all of those guys. And so after that, I thought he was going to just have me play one song. And he said, well, wait a minute. Play another one. So he called another one, and he probably thought I didn't know it. And I said, okay, all right. And he called it, and I started playing it, and,
wow.
The grin came across his face and stuff like that. So afterwards, he made me play one. So I was supposed to play one song, and he ended up playing three. And Billy didn't care because he was outside smoking cigarettes.
He was on his way out anyway, so he.
Right, exactly. But it made it easy for him because Jack didn't have to go looking for a guitar.
Yeah.
He was like auditioning me at the time, and I didn't know that. So later, at the end of the month, Jack called me. He was doing a gig in Chicago again, and it was Billy's last gig. And so he called me and he said, hey, man, I want you to meet me at my hotel, and I want to talk to you about joining the band. I said, oh, okay, all right. So I did, and he said, this is how we do it. This is, how we travel and all of that. If you're cool with all of this, then we start in 2 weeks. And I said, okay, cool. I went back home and told my mom and said, okay, I got to quit college, because a college is not going to get me to where I want to do. These guys are who I want to play with. They are the music. So, this is opportunity that I can't pass up. So my mom and dad says, well, okay, well, you just got to make sure that you're going to be, you're going to work hard to be good at it. I said, okay, no problem. And so I left and went with Jack, and then I never got back to finishing college because
it's really cool how they supported you like that, though. That's a lot of parents would have been freaking out, and maybe but they still supported you, which was cool.
They knew how hard I how I practice and stuff like that, because I was, they knew where to find me all the time. I was never, hanging out in the streets or anything like that. They knew where to find me all the time. I'll be in front of my record player with my guitar, So they knew I was dedicated to doing that, And so that's why they weren't actually worried about it,
That's the number one thing people often ask me. What do I notice is, as far as successful guitar players, number one, and probably 99% they had supportive parents.
Yeah.
By far the most common thing.
Yeah. I think even if you wanted to be a successful lawyer, a successful baker, or whatever it is, I think you're always going to need the support of your parents, so they make you feel like they know you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And they don't want to worry about you.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And they had, like for me, my parents were always, talking about accepting my own uniqueness. And so the way that I grew up was, hey, I'm always going to be only me. And if I can accept that, I won't be so hard on that. And, like where everybody else is, well, you're not just like everybody else. My parents were saying, like, we don't want you to be like anybody else.
Yeah.
You have your own uniqueness about you, so you need to celebrate that.
Wow, what a good man. So your parents were really like very probably ahead of the curve.
I think my mom and dad realized that they, I have 6 brothers and sisters.
God
So
bless them, man.
they
6
realized
brothers and
that if you
sisters.
got 7 kids,
Holy
each
smokes.
one of them is unique in themselves. So you can't treat them the same way you treat the other one because
Mm,
they're different individuals. And so I think that my mom and dad sort of realized that and made each one of us celebrate our differences.
that's really cool. From a confidence standpoint, too, that's great.
Yeah, that's that. I never had the problem about the confidence or anything like that because I think that my parents instilled that in us, all of my brothers and sisters like
Mm.
that. That I remember this one conversation. I was working, like on. I was trying to get steal something from Wes Montgomery's record, one of his records, and it was just like not forthcoming, And so I was like really frustrated. And my mom, she came in the room, told me it's time to eat dinner. She said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I just can't get this stuff." And she says, "Well, how many strings on his guitar?" I said, "6." And she said, "Well, how many strings on your guitar?" I said, "6." She said, "So that means that if he could do it, then you could do it."
Wow. Wow, man, I got goosebumps. That is really like Tony Robbins kind of stuff. Like, it's very, but a very you know what I'm saying? More heartfelt, man. That
Yeah,
is,
she totally made me not feel frustrated. And she said, "It's just going to take you more time
yeah. Wow,
because
man, that's great.
how old is he? How old are you?" And so once she put that into the relativity of everything, it made it less stressful and less frustrating.
Yeah.
I do now, if I just stay consistent, it's just going to take me more time, but I can still get there.
Wow, that's wonderful, man. Wow, that is really cool. Your mom sounds like a hell of a woman. That was really talk about Donny Hathaway.
Very, well, first of all, at the time when I was in high school, his music was played on the radio like everywhere. And what was really famous was him and Roberta Flack. They did a duet together called "Where's the Love," and that was like being blasted all on the radio everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing it.
24/7. I remember that.
Yeah, and it was just like he was just really one of my favorite vocalists, and so when I got a call from him, I I had no idea that it was really him. One of the he's from Chicago, so he lived in Chicago, and one of the guys who I was hanging out with was his drummer, and he's saying like, "Hey man, we're gonna be leaving Donny." I said, "Well, what are you guys gonna do?" "Well, we got to form our own band. We're going to do so and so and so and so." He said, "So, but like I'm giving Donny your number just in case, like you think about it." I said, "Okay, fine." That was like that was like 3 months, and Donny called me like out of the blue, and he said, "Hey man, this is this Henry Johnson?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is Donny Hathaway. I'm in Chicago, and I need a guitar player." I said, "Okay, all right. What do you want? What do you need me to do?" He says, "Well, I would like for you to come over to my place and go through some music that we're gonna do." I said, "Okay, fine." So I came over, to his house, and he lived in an apartment building, and he lived on the 17th floor. And this day, it was like 80 degrees outside. And the amp that I owned at that particular time, I don't know if you remember these, were these custom amps with the padding. It was two
No.
pieces. It was a custom head, and it was like a black padded head. And then there's a speaker that went with it. So the two speakers, and they were on rollers. And if you look up, you Google custom, you'll see that's the custom stuff that was happening in the 70s. And anyway, so I got to his place, and his elevator was out.
Oh my God.
And so I am dragging my guitar,
You've got to be kidding.
amp on my back up 17 flights of stairs. And, you know, there was no cell phones or anything then, you know. So he was just waiting for me to show up. So I was up there. And it took me 20 minutes to get up.
That's quick. You must have been hustling.
Well, it was like short, you know, like you had to come through, going through the exit, stuff like that. So the short stacks of steps. But it took me 20 minutes to get up there, and I would just look up, you know, and so like, man, it's all the way up there. But it just started getting shorter and shorter until I finally got there. And when I got to his apartment, I told him, I said, man, your elevator's out. He said, what, really? I said, yeah, if you plan on going out, you're going to have to take the steps. So anyway, I got all my stuff in finally, you know, and he said, man, you want some water or a can of soda or something like that? I said, yeah, a can of soda will be fine. So anyway, he says, once I got situated and I got plugged up and stuff like that, he said, okay, well, you know, like, I need a guitar player, and I just need you to read through this music. These are some of the things that we do. I said, okay, fine. So he puts like one chart up on the you know, like on the table, and I read through it. He said, okay, man, you got the gig now, you know. Yeah, 17 flights to read one chart, one sheet of
That's
music.
what probably got you the gig, being willing to go up 17 flights. Seriously, that was probably what got you the gig. What's he going to do? Say no? I mean,
But
you're halfway good, you know?
He says, here's my manager's number, you know, call them. We set everything up, so the need to travel information and all that stuff. So it was like, it was just like that.
That's wild.
And I was with him until he died.
Until he passed. Did you ever know of a guitar player, Reggie Young?
Reggie Young? No.
Yeah, he was out of originally from Memphis, but then out of Nashville. He played with Donny for a while. He was one of the most prolific session guys.
Reggie Young? No.
He just passed last year as well.
What albums was he on? Some albums with him?
Yes, and I can't tell you what they were off the top of my head. He played a lot. He played some on Donny stuff, and he also played with. I'm having a brain fart.
We'll remember it later.
Yeah, but anyway, I was just curious if you might have bounced into him. Just a nice story, man. Ramsey Lewis. What a player that dude is, man.
Yeah, that was a guy who I grew up watching on television. Because my sister, you know, like they all had his records and stuff like that. So when the In Crowd out came out, that was it, you know, like in Wade in the Water and all that stuff. My sisters had all those records. And so like at the time, you know, I had no idea that we ended up playing with him. And it was sort of like the same situation that happened with Donny. After Donny had passed, I was working locally in Chicago, you know, the jazz clubs and stuff like that. And then I get a call, which I thought was one of my buddies, because I had a buddy who was a drummer who just loved to play jokes, and he would imitate people all the time. So anyway, I get a call one morning about 11 o'clock, and the call says, "Hi, this is Ramsey Lewis. I heard that you are for hire." And I said, "Man, stop playing around. You know, what do you need? I'll talk to you later. You know, I told you I'll see you later on tonight." And so, like, I hung up because I thought it was my. So, like,
you're getting punked.
About 10 minutes later, the phone rings again, and he said, "Hello, this is Ramsey Lewis. Don't hang up." I said, "Is this seriously you? This is Ramsey?" He said, "Yes, this is Ramsey Lewis. Don't hang up." I said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I thought you were a friend of mine." So anyway, he said, "Listen, I know that you, I've heard your name around Chicago, and I need a guitar player to add to my trio. I have a trio, and I want to add the guitar to it because I have recordings that has guitar on it. So are you available to come and meet with me? And I said, sure. When would you need to do that? He says, well, I'm recording a record right now at Universal Studios in Chicago. But if you can come down at about like 3:00 tomorrow afternoon, then that would be great. I said, okay, I'll be there. So, I'm thinking like, okay, he wants to audition me or something like that. I said, okay, fine. I brought my guitar with me. And
Your telly, or you had something else at that time?
At that time, I actually had a Gill X500. I bought that. I'll tell you the story about the telly later. But anyway, so the next day I go down to the Universal Studios, and he's got like a producer, and there's like like violins and all kinds of stuff. Like he's in the middle of a recording session and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, this is like intense, And his road manager was there, so I met his road manager, and we were waiting, and he took a break. So he comes up to me and he says, "Okay, you're Henry Johnson?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Okay, well, I'm Ramsey Lewis," and he says, "This is my manager, Dennis Booth, and you're hired." Okay. Talk to Dennis. Go with Dennis, and he'll tell you everything you need to know. And we leave in 2 weeks.
Were you freaking out?
I said, but Mr. Lewis, you haven't heard anything, like he said, I've heard about you. Your reputation precedes you.
Wow.
I'm not worried, we'll rehearse next week, and then we'll go out in 2 weeks.
Holy smoke, that is really cool.
Yeah, so that was
how good did you feel, if you could remember, that when he said your reputation precedes you, man, that had to make you feel like $1 million, that like whatever you're doing is like working.
When he said that, it went right over my head because I was still in shock.
That you said you got the job. You
right,
start
because
in 2 weeks.
It's like who walks into a job where it's like I want to hear you, or can you play this, and like that. It wasn't any of that. I'm looking at a jazz legend, and I'm looking at him in his environment of creating music that's going to be going out on a record that's going to be selling.
Yeah.
The producers and a whole orchestra's there and all that. I'm looking at all of that. I was just too much in shock. That whole thing went right over my head.
That's wonderful, man.
So that was that was where I started my relationship with him.
And were you living at home with your parents then, or were you married at that time, or?
No, at that time I was living on my own.
When you told your folks, they had to be like over the moon for you, no?
I told my sister, she said, "You're lying." I said, "No, I'm not."
When you told your parents,
the guy whose records you got in your record collection called me to work with him. So they were all, my parents were very, very excited and stuff like that. Yeah.
Where were you first time you played the In Crowd? And what did that feel like?
Well, the first time we performed it, we were on this was weird, man. Back then, all of the places that we played, the clubs, they were open. So when you did a gig, it was 6 nights a week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, clubs were open 7 days a week, and like you went out for 6 nights a week.
Where did you go first? What was your first?
Our first gig was in a jazz club that was in this big mall that just had been open for like a year, and it was in Dearborn, Michigan. And they had a huge jazz club in there that was bringing all top flight entertainers through there, and we were there for like 2 weeks.
So first time you played the In Crowd
was in Dearborn, Michigan. Yeah.
What did it feel like?
Those things are surreal. It's the same thing when I played with Donny, and I started playing like "Where's the Love" and that I grew up listening to. It was surreal that you kind of like have to pinch yourself to think that, okay, I'm not in front of a record player now. I'm actually on stage with this person, and I need to play his music properly. So yeah, you have those pinch you moments. it becomes surreal. And that continued with everybody that I played with. I was, because I had listened to all these people like when I was a kid, but actually meeting them and playing with them was even, surreal.
Talk one more. Let's do Dizzy.
Now, Dizzy Gillespie was one of my heroes from way back, because you have to remember when I was growing up, all of the stuff on television, all of the bands were all real bands.
Right.
Yeah, so the Tonight Show and all those variety shows, they use real bands and they use real jazz musicians who were in those bands. So I was seeing them all at the time. And Dizzy Gillespie was already famous when I was a kid. So just to be able to see him on television and see him on, jazz was all indoctrinated into our daily television. And see, like right now, you can't find it. If it wasn't for YouTube, you wouldn't even know that there's jazz musicians in the country, But just think about a time when it was like every day. You saw, every day you could see Joe Pass on television. You could see Herb Ellis. They were all in those bands. So when I saw Dizzy, I had been seeing him like for years and years and years. But after my second recording came out, I was working with Joe Williams, and we were in New York at this club doing a 3-week stint. And the label that I was with was MCA, which had a office in Los Angeles. They had an office in Chicago. They had an office in New York. And so when we were in New York, they were behind promoting every time. So everywhere I would go, I would get a phone call from MCA saying like, hey, promotion department is setting up interviews for you here, there, there, there. So when we were in New York, I got a phone call at my hotel, and the promotion guy in New York was Don Lukoff. And Don Lukoff called me up and says, hey, look, man, we got a whole thing. This time we're doing like a TV show. I said, a TV show? He said, yeah, you and Joe Williams and Dizzy Gillespie, just you three are going to do this television show. I said, what television show is it? He says, well, there's a new station called VH1.
Wow.
And I said, okay. He said, yeah, VH1 shows videos. So there's a jazz video show that's on there, and you and Dizzy and Joe are going to host this video show. And what you're going to show is all the jazz videos that's being made.
Wow.
So we did that. We had a half an hour show, and we played the videos of Miles and everybody else, because back then Michael Jackson was just starting to make videos, and the jazz guys were making videos too. So they were showing those videos, and that was the station. That's before it came to be what it is now.
Yeah.
They were just starting out. They were new. So they were open to all different kinds of music. And jazz was a music that was, had videos, and they were showing it too. So we hosted that show, and we actually performed 2 numbers on the show, just like off right on the spot.
With you, Joe, and Dizzy.
Me, Joe, and Dizzy. There was no rehearsal.
So was that the only time you've played with Dizzy?
That was the only time that we actually did that television show where it's documented, that of me playing with him. But then throughout, like all my career, he has come in. We've been in the same town together. He has come in and sat in with our bands, stuff like that. He's sat in with Ramsey. He's sat in with Joe. He's sat in with Joe all the time. And other different people, everybody has sat in with us. Stevie Wonder is a big Ramsey Lewis fan. And I can't tell you how many times that Stevie has come in, done a concert in one city and found out that we were there and would just come and hang out with us and sit in and play. There's no video of that, because back then we didn't have no YouTube. There was no internet.
Yeah.
So, nobody cared. They just said, oh, wow, there's Stevie Wonder on stage and he's playing with Ramsey. Nowadays, people take their phone out and says, next thing you know, within 40 minutes, it's like posted someplace.
Oh, it's posted everywhere. Like you can't get away. Let me ask you this, Henry. What was what were some of the more important, I guess the word might be lessons or just takeaways from playing with these heavies? And it doesn't have to be about music. It could be about music, about business, about life, anything.
Well, it's so many of them that you just have like all of you're around. Those guys are like a source because they're still there. They're still functioning at the highest level. You know that they know something. And my mind was always curious. So, when we were doing that TV show, Dizzy was backstage on the phone. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of hear the conversation. He was saying, well, man, you play this and I play this over that. And so I was like, figuring out who is he talking to? And the production guy says, hey, man, we got 10 minutes before we got to go on. And so Dizzy wrapped up the phone call. And I said, Diz, who was that on the phone? He said, that was Miles on the phone. We talk all the time. And I was just telling him, we were talking about the minor 7 flat 5 chord. And I'm saying like, what? But they live music. That's what their thing was all about. And their dedication, it was like a big awakening for me. Because if he's still talking to Miles Davis, who Miles has already made a name for himself, biggest guy, and Diz is still, they're still talking as like friends. That means that music is never ending. You're going to be growing the rest of your life. And that's the great thing about it. You're never going to know it all. So you got something to look forward to every day that you wake up. So the thing that I took away from that situation with Dizzy was I asked him, I said, you guys can still talk about that after all of this time? I said, after you created this music that we all are playing now. And I said, he said, man, that's just the tip of the iceberg. He said, there was 100 years worth of music happening before I came along. He says, I'm never going to be able to get it all. He said, but I have something consistently to work on every day now. And so that was my takeaway that, hey, if this guy who's been playing 50 years already is humble enough to realize that he doesn't know everything, it makes it so much easier for me to accept that I'm not ever going to know everything. But I can wake up knowing that I'm going to have to look forward to something new to learn.
What a valuable lesson to learn at that point in time, or in general, but and to learn it from these guys.
Yeah, it was a big takeaway, man. But I came across that with all of those guys that I have met and had the opportunity to play with and be mentored by and stuff like that. It was just a enlightening moment. It gave me like hope and saying like, wow, that's cool. I don't have to beat myself up anymore because I'm never going to learn it all anyway.
Yeah.
But I can look forward to learning something.
That's such a valuable lesson, man.
Yeah, it was for me, for sure.
So here's a good jumping point from there. I mentioned earlier, whenever I spoke to you, we've spoken a few times before this, I always walked away. You were like one of these guys, you walk away from the conversation feeling better than you did going into it. You got more energy. Whatever you've said has been positive, supportive, just like your like intentions are really good, and you're just a good person. But you're also, and I said this earlier, very cognizant about limitations and how you have them and how you don't have them. And the question I had was, where does this come from? But now I see it started with not the programming, but the philosophy and the approach of your parents.
Right.
But I was curious, have you had other mentors along the way that helped you specifically with this mindset about,
yeah. I mean, Craig, all these guys that was the most amazing thing to me, that all of these guys, especially the jazz guys, were of that mindset. That mindset is what helped them evolve on a daily basis. You notice, like, some people back, way back then, they could have one hit and they could live the rest of their lives off of that. But
Yeah,
the
for one
jazz
song.
guys have to reinvent themselves every year.
Yes.
They don't have hits that they can ride their whole life off of. They have to reinvent themselves every year. But that means that that's progression. It's progress. And that means that they're going to be constantly learning stuff. And it was that learning part that made me really love being able to look forward to that. So I had, I would run into, like, some of my favorite people who are still mentors now is George Benson. I ran into him early because of his connection with Jack McDuff. See, when you play with the organ players, all the organ players use the guitar player. So when you come through those bands, that's like a school.
Yeah.
That's a school of learning and that type of music. And all of the great guitar players came through organ players. So George Benson, he was 17 when he was with Jack McDuff.
Wow.
His career got launched because of Jack McDuff. And Pat Martino is another guy who came along with the organ players. Don Patterson was in Pittsburgh, not Pittsburgh, but Philadelphia. That was one of the people who he was playing with. All the organ players, but even before that, when he was like, Pat has been a child prodigy. Like, he was playing like he was when he was like 13, 14 years old. So he still had the same amount of chops he's got right now and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. But he came up playing with the saxophone player Willis Jackson. Well, Willis Jackson had an organ player. So that format of the organ band, that was very consistent, because back then a lot of jazz clubs had their own organs. Just like the jazz clubs in the 50s had their own pianos.
Right.
So, whatever new thing would happen, the clubs would equip themselves so the people who were playing them wouldn't have to be trying to drag a piano around. But Jack McDuff I was on Jack's gig when George Benson came in and saw us. One of the gigs, we used to have to play these gigs. We were playing 6 nights a week, and we had one night off. And this one place was in New Jersey. Well, George lived in New Jersey. And he was in town, and we played a matinee. The matinee was on Saturday nights or Sunday nights. And so the matinee would be at 2 p.m. We were at a matinee, and all of these jazz guys came in.
Wow.
And so, like, I'm looking, at that time, the clubs a lot of the clubs had the band behind the bar on a stage. So the stage was high, and you could sit down at the bar and you'd be looking up at the band. So it was quite a few clubs were made like that. It was leftover from the 40s and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm on the stage, behind the bar, and the whole band's on stage. And there was this one song that Jack knew that I could not play fast. And, because I would just, fail at it every night, So I would dread when he would call it, And George Benson walks in and he sits down at the bar and he's looking dead up at me. And I'm saying, like, oh my God, there's George Benson, and Jack knows George is there because he's looking at him too. So he just decided that, I'm going to call that tune. And he called that tune that was really fast, and I was struggling, like I couldn't even make it through 2 courses, So I finally gave up, And later, everybody was looking at George, and I just went to him and I said, hey man, you work with this guy. How in God's name did you learn how to play fast like that so you could, play these kind of things that he's doing? And George had never laid his eyes on me. And he took me over into the corner. This club was packed. He took me over in the corner that was, like hardly anybody in it. And he took my guitar with me and he showed me exactly how he showed me his picking technique.
How cool is that?
And he took me on his wing and he says, okay, this is what I did. This is what you got to do. You got to practice this. He said, practice it in the mirror because it's going to be the way you're playing now. You're going to have to switch from that. You practice in the mirror. So whenever you can see it, you can correct yourself. And, just, hit me up every time, we get to town, we'll hang out and whatever, So after I did that like every day. It was kind of weird.
In the mirror and push yourself every day to do the tune.
Yeah, because it was like relearning how to walk. But after a month of doing it like every day, diligently, consistently, and making my right hand relearn how to react to the left, all of a sudden I stopped having any problems at all. I never had a problem after that.
Wow.
And he's been like my mentor and my friend since that day in that club.
Did you almost feel like, in a sense, obligated that George Benson sits and tells you just like, man, I've got to own this now. I got to fix this right away.
No, I didn't feel obligated. I felt relieved that there was an answer to my problem, and he had the answer, and he was gracious enough to see the problem and point it out and show it to me and tell me how to fix it.
What can you, without getting too technical, what was the specifics about what were you doing wrong?
Well, my left hand was trying to play information that the right hand could not play. They were on two separate pages. And I started playing with my thumb. When I got introduced to Wes Montgomery, I started playing with my thumb. And so after that, there's the thing about George that people don't know, that he plays with his thumb. Everything that he can play with a pick, he can play with his thumb. And some of his records, people think that it's a pick, but it's actually his thumb. So
I didn't know that, actually.
He when he was showing me what I was doing wrong, he said, "You play with your thumb?" I said, "Yeah." He said, so he said, "Show me." And so I showed him, the stuff that I could play with your thumb. He said, "Why would you think that your left hand has to be doing anything different because you got a pick?" And I said, "That's a good question. I don't know." So after answering that question, I had to re-question everything else that my right hand was doing, because it wasn't deciphering the information that the left hand was doing.
Okay.
They were not in sync. And the thumb was in sync because it's organic, it's my first connection. So in other words, if I got a guitar and I put my hands on the guitar, I immediately have a connection there. But once I pull a pick out and put it in my hand, now I got a middleman. The middleman has got to interpret what my thumb would naturally do. So that gives me a whole nother set of variables that I have to deal with. Get rid of the pick, no problem. Everything played easily with my thumb. Put the pick in my hand, middleman, now they're not deciphering information the exact same way.
Very cool.
How do I deal with that? George's way of, showing me how to deal with that is the pick has to become your thumb. That was what I had to start learning how to do. Once that happened, then okay.
So did you switch to the thumb pick?
No, I just start using the pick as if it was my thumb. And that was just the easiest thing to think about in terms of relearning how to sync my hands together.
Wow. How cool is that, man? That George took that time to help you.
It was an intense month. But after that month, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And, like somewhere because we didn't have, Walkmans then and stuff like that. But somewhere I have a recording of myself after I switched over, and I could hear, like when I hear the recording, I could hear like, oh man, I was 22. This is what happened in 1 month, because I did have recordings of me before that, and they were not like, it was almost like listening to a different person.
That's really cool, man. Thank you.
So, without George Benson's graciousness and his kindness, I don't know if I would have developed, like my musical abilities to where they are now without his help.
Great story, man. Thanks, Henry. All right. Let me ask you this. What were some of the low points or the dark periods that you've had to deal with throughout life, and how'd you get through them?
Well, I have to think about I didn't actually have any dark periods.
That's wow.
The only dark period you probably, if you would consider dark, is if like your relatives get sick and your relatives pass on and stuff like that. Those are sad periods, but I wouldn't call them dark. I think dark periods is like when you're having troubles and you trying to find a way out of them. I was fortunate enough to not have those. And I don't ask me why or how. I don't know.
I'm so happy for you, man, to be honest with you. I think that's great.
I think it has to do with my parents and the mindset that they created. There's always, I think, going to be dark periods in time itself that you're going to be around, but you are your own universe. And so inside me, I get to dictate what's there. I get to say whether it's negative or positive. I'm the one that actually gets to do that. So if I think, like, let me see if I can put this in a way. Thoughts are things and things are thoughts.
100%. You're preaching to the choir, bro.
So whatever you think is in your environment, that's whatever you create, because energy follows thought. If you keep thinking about something, you keep directing energy towards it.
Yeah.
And that energy being shot towards it is going to make it manifest. So I start thinking about, what do I want to do with this energy that I have? We have the physical energy, but we also have the mental energy. And we're sort of like, we got this mind that we don't really know how it works. We haven't been given a manual to it, so we don't actually know how it works. We know that we use it, but what's the capacity? Are we using it to its fullest extent? We don't really know any of that because we don't have any manuals to say like, hey, here's a mind. Here's what you can do with it. There's no manual that tells us that. So we sort of have like this capacity that we're not sure what it can be. So I was always like a reader. And so I would always think about these questions that nobody ever thought about. I guess I'm sure other people thought about them hundreds of years before me. But it would be a question about, why is this way? Or how did this get to be this way? How can I make something this way? My questions was always how. If I ask the right questions, then I'll be guided to the right answers. So that was my philosophy, of always asking questions that would lead me to the right answers. Because you can ask a question, but it might not be the answer that you want because you didn't ask the right question.
Yeah. Wow, man, I'm so impressed is not the right word, although I am impressed. I'm just so in awe that you had this level of awareness pretty much throughout.
Yeah, I don't, like I said, I think, I'm sure that my mom having to deal with 7 kids had to come up with a process where she watched us and see how each one of us process information. Because she could say something to me that would get right to me. But then she could turn around and say something to my brother, which wouldn't be the same thing, and get to him. Or my sisters, get to them. So she never treated us as like we were just one big general thing, one
Yeah.
size fits all. She always, would tell me, well, yeah, I remember one time I asked her this when we were grown, and I said, how did you know that, that if you wanted to actually get my brother to do something, this is what you had to do or say to him? She said, well, I just watched y'all since y'all was kids. I could see that, he liked this, he liked that, he liked that, he liked that. So in order to get you to do something or get through to you, it would have to be something that you like. And so I just totally looked at the language that each one of you speak, and I learned that. So I thought that was, very unique, but I don't put anything, nothing about mothers amaze me anymore.
Yeah.
Because they seem to know, I mean, like they have a connection with you when you're inside them. So I think that connection, that spiritual connection with you, it goes throughout your whole life, and they just know you.
Have you taught your own? You said you have one child. Have you taught your child? Have you done the same with your raising your child?
Tried to, but it's a she, and I let her process, like I look at the way she processes information and stuff like that. But some of them, you have to allow them to go on their own path,
Right.
because if they're not curious enough to ask the right questions, you can't give somebody an answer to a question.
Oh, to a question they're not interested in. Yes.
Yeah. They didn't
Totally.
ask that question, so you trying to give them an answer is that they won't hear it or understand it.
Right. Right.
So you sort of have to learn patience, because you have to stand by and wait
Oh
for
yeah.
them
Yeah.
to ask the right question.
Right. You're trying to give them dinner. They're not even hungry.
Right,
You want to
exactly.
know what they want to eat. And they're not even hungry. Yeah. I totally get it, man.
Exactly, yeah. So you can try to do that, but it's like every person is unique.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Let's talk about gear and music for a little bit. You play with and without a pick, and you mentioned that a few minutes ago. What got you into doing either one?
Um, well, when I first started playing, that was just the most natural thing to do.
It's without a pick.
Yeah. And then I saw Wes Montgomery on television. I said, wow, he can play all of that without a pick? Because at the time, like I was learning, I said, well, if I got, I need to play that Soul Man lick that's on the record. I can't play that with my thumb because it doesn't sound the same. So like I found a pick, make it sound just like the record. So Steve Cropper was using the pick, and that's why it sounded that way. I said, okay, well, I want it to sound like that. I want to know what it is that makes it sound that way. So I would start using the pick, but I didn't have anybody showing me how to use a pick. So I just, I was just doing whatever I could do. And then I started actually, like when I saw Wes, I started playing with my thumb, just learning, just doing it. Because when you're sitting around and you got a guitar all the time, the easiest thing, you got to go look for a pick. But if I got a guitar, I don't have to look for anything. I just play it, and that's the easiest thing. It's the most easy, accessible thing around is your thumb. So that's how I end up, playing with my thumb. Later on, I started playing with a pick, and then that's when the problem started.
Yeah. So you said you have like a signature guitar, I think, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. The company Heritage uh, was started by the guys who were at Gibson, and when Gibson got bought by, I think the guy's name is Henry Jesowitz or something like that.
Yeah.
He bought Gibson, and he decided that he was going to move everything from Kalamazoo to Nashville.
Mm.
And those guys were saying like, hey, look, we're cool if you want to keep the factory here and stuff like that. But you talking about us uprooting our families, like that we've been here for decades. Our families are, like growing up here and stuff like that. We're not moving. So what they did was they stayed, and he left and built a factory in Nashville. And so they just didn't have a job. So they decided, like, well, we're all still here. The factory is still here. Why don't we just, rent the factory out? So the people who own the factory says, look, we don't have nobody to go in there and use it anyway. So yeah, we'll rent it to you. So they started Heritage. And they started building, but the difference was they didn't have any assembly lines in there. They took all the assembly lines out and started making everything by hand. So all their guitars were handmade. Best woods, best process, everything. And when I met those guys, I didn't know anything about them. They were at a NAMM show, and they had a guitar that was on display there that they called the Golden Eagle. There was something familiar about the guitar. It had these cloud inlays. And I had seen those cloud inlays on, there was a rare guitar called the Gibson Citation. And they had only made a certain amount of copies, back in the 60s. And I saw Kenny Burrell with one. That was the first time I ever seen one. And they had brought it up from Kalamazoo to Chicago for his gig. They let him use it for the gig because they wanted to know what he thought about the guitar and, should we make any more or should we add it to our line or anything like that. And so he played the guitar the night that I saw him. And the look of the guitar is beautiful and it stuck with me. So in the 80s, the NAMM show, the summer NAMM show used to be in Chicago for a long time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was the summer NAMM. And that NAMM show, I was walking there and I was headed to Gibson because my album had been out and stuff like that. And I was heading to Gibson because they wanted to talk to me about an endorsement. So I was on my way to Gibson booth and I passed by this small little booth that had this guitar on display and it looked just really, really familiar. So I said, I'm going to stop and talk to these guys, So I stopped and talked to them and I said, where are you guys from? And they said, well, we're from Kalamazoo. I said, Kalamazoo, really? I said, I've never heard of Heritage Guitars before. I said, where in Kalamazoo? And they said, we're in a factory there. And I said, okay, why are you being really evasive? And I said, are you guys part of Gibson? And they said, no, we're not part of Gibson. I said, okay, I see what's happening here. I said, were you part of Gibson? And they just shook their head, And I said, so were you the guys who made guitars at Gibson since the 40s, the late 40s? And they all shook their head. And I said, why are you guys shaking your head instead of talking? I said, can you not talk about this? And they shook their head and said, no.
Oh, okay.
So I said, okay.
They probably had a non-compete that they weren't honoring or somehow got out of it.
No, what I had read about that they had been sued by Gibson.
Okay.
They had a restraining order, not a restraining order, but they had a what do you call it? They had a gag order on them.
Yeah, right.
Where they couldn't tell anybody who they were. Gibson had sued them in the settlement. They got a gag order put on that they could not tell anybody who they were.
Okay.
So I had to ask these questions, yes and no kind of questions. And I said, okay, so did Gibson sue you? And they just said, shook their head. And I said, so you have a gag order on you. You can't talk about this. And they shook their head. I said, okay, then only thing I have to do is ask you questions that end in yes or no. So I started asking the yes or no questions. I said, you guys built the guitar that Wes Montgomery used. They shook their head, yeah. I said, you built the guitar that B.B. King used. You built all of these guitars. They shook their heads, yes. I said, so you literally are Gibson. And they shook their heads. And I said, was it any of you guitar makers with Gibson that left and went to Nashville? They shook their heads. I said, no. I said, so all the guitar makers at Gibson are not really Gibson. And they shook their head.
Ah, cool.
Okay. I said, okay, you guys, are you interested in doing an endorsement with me? And they all shook their heads and said, yeah, because nobody knew who they were. And so at that particular point, I said, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. We just did a one-page contract right then and there. I said, you may not be able to talk about you. I said, but I don't have a gag order.
Sure.
And so I promised them, I said, I will make sure that everybody knows about this company and knows who you are. And I put them on the map.
Holy, so how cool is that? So they were probably, did they jump over hoops to do anything for you, I'm assuming?
I was like family then. From that point on, I was like family because they knew that I realized their craftsmanship and who they were. And I thought it was very disrespectful for anybody to slap a gag on them and stop them from making, supporting themselves and making a business.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and your album was tearing it up, so they were thrilled to have you.
That album we were talking about had already shot to the charts. And so we were getting ready to do the next album. So this was like in 1987 when I met these guys. And I just told them, I said, hey, man, we're going to do everything. And I was doing like, after the first record came out, and it was like all these interviews from paper, international, radio, TV, everything. It was all coming through. And it was like, MCA was getting like tons and tons of calls and requests for me to do interviews, radio interviews, TV interviews, and paper interviews, and all kinds of stuff. So every interview, I talked about heritage. I told everybody who they were. I was playing it. I used their heritage on my album covers and all of that stuff. That helped them jump off into being a national guitar company. Because, and see, Gibson was mad at me. That guy who owned Gibson, he was really mad at me.
Henry Juskowitz, yeah.
Yeah. And because he couldn't do anything about it. He knew that once the word got out, and then I was actually playing the guitars too, So they were, they were feeding off it. And every guitar that Gibson made, they had a matching guitar for it. So the 335s that became and the Les Pauls, they had their own versions of those that were better than what Gibson was making because these were the guys who actually made the original ones. So at that particular point, after 5 years, everybody knew who Heritage was. Because on that video you're talking about with Dizzy Gillespie,
yeah,
Heritage's name Guitars was right on that video on television. They were freaking out when they saw it on television.
That's really cool. So I'm assuming you had a great run with them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like, those guys just retired because they're all in their 80s, man. They can't go in and, make guitars anymore. So we get up at 6 a.m. to go and make guitars. Sure. They got different labs and stuff like that now, but they're all retired now. But I was with them, for 34, 35 years.
And you got whatever guitar you wanted, whenever you wanted, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah. I came up with all of my guitars that they made were unique. I never got a guitar that they made that was right off the rack or anything like that. Every time I would call them, they said, look, man, we can make whatever you can imagine. So, if you got something in mind, just tell us what it is, we'll make it. And so like I have I've got at least like 8 or 9 guitars that they've made. And even one of them's acoustic. And they didn't do acoustic guitars, but they made me one. And the neck of that acoustic feels exactly like an electric guitar. I've never played acoustic guitar that has that kind of action before. And it has the hole is not round, it's oval. So the projection of it is totally unique to just that.
So the guitar you're playing, your custom guitar from them, it looks kind of like a 335. Is that a fair statement?
No, the guitar that my model is the exact dimensions of a L5.
Okay.
From 1965.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay.
And that's their, that's their flagship model. So if you want if you wanted a real L5, my model would be the one that you would.
The closest one that you get.
Closest one, and they also made one what they call a Super KB, because I also got Kenny Burrell involved too. He never had it. Gibson never endorsed him either, and so I had them talk to Kenny Burrell, and they made him a guitar what they call a Super KB. Instead of the Super 400, it's called a Super KB, and that's their version of a Super 400. And they used Kenny's Super 400, the exact dimensions of it and everything, just to make it for him.
So how does your your heritage, your Henry Johnson guitar differ from an actual L5, or is it really similar? Like you have 8 or 9 of them. How are those different that you have lying around?
I only have one of my model. I have the very first one that they made.
Okay.
And I only have one of those. And it's not different from an L5. It's exactly an L5.
Wow. That's like a rare guitar, man.
Down to the inches. Because when I designed it, I asked them, I said, you guys have any of the old catalogs they had old Gibson catalogs back from the 60s. So they pulled one out and they showed it to me, and I made I copied it, and I got the dimensions. And so when I designed how it looks and stuff like that, the dimensions are exactly of what they were using in the 60s L5.
What are the other guitars you have from them?
Other guitars are other kinds of Golden Eagles.
They're all semi-hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're all, well, they're not semi-hollow. I only have one guitar that they made that's semi-hollow, like a sort of like it's the same width as a 335, one of your 335s.
Yeah.
But it's not a 335. It has the there's only one cutaway instead of 2 cutaways.
Okay. But
it's like that.
Yeah.
And that one is a unique one because
they all sound like they're unique, man.
They are our children. And I was looking at the serial numbers, and I dated them with the serial numbers. The oldest one I have, man, is like 34 years old.
Wow.
I didn't realize it's been that long. But that guitar, the first one they made me, is 34 years old.
Are these all thinner necks or thicker necks? Well, how do you play?
No, they're thin. They're thin, fast-acting necks.
Yeah.
But my model is the exact same neck as the L5 from the 60s.
And what kind of pickups? I'm assuming the pickups are very similar to the old vintage Gibsons.
Yeah, but better because some of them, like the windings are different now. And they, at that particular time, they had a pickup that they called the HRW, which was one of the most fast response pickups I had ever used before. So I put those into all my heritage guitars. I had them put HRW in all of them because it's a fast response. Now they don't make the HRWs anymore.
God, those are like, that's your retirement, man.
I don't know about all of them.
Well, I'm just saying those are pretty unique guitars, man. Like literally unique.
Yeah, they are.
Like
and now the guys are all retired and they don't make them anymore. It's like, these are one of a kind now.
Wow, that's great.
Man, who are some of your favorite guitar players you've played with?
I like all of them for something. It's really hard to say, oh, well, this is my favorite guy, this is my favorite guy. As you get older, you start realizing that they're all of your favorite guys. because each one of them is totally unique personality and makes you feel a certain way. And that way that you feel about that person is the value that he brings, which is totally just him. So, you know, and you like listening to him, but then you like listening to the other guy, and you like listening to the other guy. So what ends up happening is you don't have a favorite anymore. All of them become your favorites. And you take joy in hearing every one of them when you hear the opportunity when you have an opportunity to hear them. You take joy in listening to them. Like I love listening to George Benson, you know, when we're hanging around and just sitting down and playing. He just, you know, he's that guy who practices all of the time, every day. And, you know, he just told me every day you got to work on the music.
Do you practice a lot still?
Yes.
What's the last thing you practiced?
The last thing I practiced was last night until about 4 a.m.
Holy smokes. What were you working on?
I was working on some information, deciphering some information from Freddie Hubbard onto the guitar.
Wow.
So some of his harmonic information that's not on the guitar, I have to figure out like where it is. So that's a process that I really enjoy, figuring out puzzles, you know, and having that information like, okay, this is trumpet. How is this going to work on the guitar? You know, so I enjoy that puzzle, putting it together, you know.
And it is so motivating. Your commitment to your playing is like huge. Even now, I mean, it hasn't changed.
Yeah, I you know, my templates for that stuff is like George, you know, and Dizzy and all that. Those guys like was working on that stuff like every day. It was such a part of them. I remember Dizzy Gillespie told me this story. It was about Thelonious Monk. He said that they were all hanging out, you know, and they said, well, let's go over to Monk's house and get him, and let's see if we can go out to breakfast. So they all went over, you know, like two of them showed up at Monk's house, and they knocked on the door, and Monk was sitting at his piano practicing. And Dizzy said, hey, Monk, come on, man, we're going to go out to breakfast. And Monk said, no, man, I'm working on this tune right now. He says, he said, no, I'm working on one of Duke Ellington's tunes. I got to learn how to play it. So he said, okay, well, we're going to go to breakfast, man. We check back with you later. So Dizzy and his buddies went to breakfast, and then they went to a session or something like that. So when they got out of the session, it was like in the afternoon, about like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So they said, well, I'm going to call up Monk and see what he's doing, man. So he went by and, you know, called up Monk and said, hey, Monk, we're thinking about hanging out tonight, man. What are you doing now? He said, man, I'm still working on that tune. He said, what? Man, the tune ain't got that many changes to it. He said, well, look, I got to break it down to where I can slow it down and learn it piece by piece. He said, all right, man. So they went out and they had to work a gig that night, you know, that evening. So the gig was like at 6 o'clock, you know. So they showed up at the gig and they had, you know, the gig was over with at 9 o'clock. So they said, man, let's go by Monk's house and see if we can go out and go get some dinner. So they show up at Monk's house, and his wife comes to the door, and they said, hey, where's Monk at? He said, he's still over here at the piano. And they went over, came up and said, Monk, come on, man, we're going to go get something to eat, man. He said, man, I'm still working on this tune. He said, Monk, the tune ain't got that many bars to it, man. He said, look, he said, if I work on every part of it like it's a neighborhood, then I'm going to get through the whole neighborhood before I get back home. So that's why I'm working on it slow. He said, when I'm finished with it, I will totally know everything about it. So they went out to dinner, and Dizzy said they called Monk later about 10 o'clock just to see if he was going to hang out. And He said, Monk, what are you doing now, man? He said, well, I'm finally finished now. He said, now I know the whole tune, inside and outside. And so that to me, Dizzy told me, he said, Monk worked on that tune all day long. He know every in and out of it.
Yeah.
And we came on the gig, like 2 days later, they had a gig together. He said, man, Monk came up with stuff that we didn't even know was on the tune.
Because of what he invested into it.
He played everything so slow that he could see all of the stuff that was laying in front of you, but you normally pass by because you're trying to speed by and learn it quick. So from that point on, he said, I always approach the tune now like a ballad. And so I got that from him too. And so I learned every song, no matter how fast it is, I learned every song as if it's a ballad. Because if I don't speed by, I will see all the nooks and crannies of the song that I normally don't see because I'm going fast or medium tempo.
What software do you use to slow stuff down? Just curious.
The software that I use is called Transcribe with an exclamation point.
And you can play it, slows it down, keeps it in the same key?
Yes, keeps it in the same key, or you can move it to another key.
Yeah.
But the thing is the guy who created it is a guitar player in Great Britain. And the algorithm that he used on it, when you slow it down, it doesn't degrade. And now he added some new stuff with it where you can actually load a video and slow the video down without losing the quality.
Oh, like a YouTube download. Oh, that's
and it
cool.
stays in sync with the video.
I'm going to check that out.
I've never seen that before. So, when he had emailed me and told me these are new things that we did with it. So the first thing I did was I grabbed the video off of a YouTube of Wes Montgomery playing, and I put it in there, and I clicked on slow down, and it slowed it down right with his fingers so you could see exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I said, okay, that's the software that I've been using that for a while. And, if you get it, he doesn't even charge for updates or anything like that.
Oh, it's a lot. If you buy it once, you get it for life.
Buy it once, it's like I've never, I paid for it once and I've never upgraded. And I've had I think it's up to 8.43 now.
Okay.
But I started with 1.1.
Thank you, man. I'm going to check that out. I use something called Automatic Slow Downer.
Yeah, amazing slow down. Yeah,
amazing slow down. Yeah,
that one's okay, but the algorithms get kind of funky when you slow it down to 25%.
Yeah, and I always break things down really slow, to be honest with you, because I want to master. I'm not going to say I'm like you guys, but I like to master it slow, and then okay, now let me do it 30% and 35%.
Right. That's the way that all of them learn how to play. All the guys that we. Like the jazz guys that we came up with, stuff like that. Even the blues guys and rock guys, they all learn how to play off of the records.
Yeah.
Because you can't write a feel down. You can't write a nuance down. There's no way to describe that. The only way you can get that is actually playing with the recording so you can get that feel, the exact moment, the exact timing. All of those things are in the recording. You can't get that from trying to read a transcription or read a tab.
Yeah.
Tabs don't have that. They can't give a description of that. That's why it's so important that when we practice with the recordings.
Yeah.
Not metronomes and nothing like that. Metronomes are time that is mechanical, but we spend 99% of our time playing with human beings. Human time flows, ebbs, is flexible. That's why you can take a whole group of musicians, even if it's 5 or 6 of them, they're all playing together and they're flowing together. They're flexible together. If you try to match that up with a metronome, it will not work. Human beings are not machines.
I'm curious about this. What do you like most about yourself?
Well, the biggest thing I like about myself is my ability to adapt. Because I think that that's where longevity comes from, you being able to adapt.
Yeah, I think as a business owner, that's the most important thing. You have to be able to adapt to change. You're not going to survive because everything's always changing, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We live in a moment of flux. Every moment something is changing, even though it might not be changing around us. But in the world that we're living in
Oh
right
yeah.
now, every moment something somewhere is changing. And when we become aware of it, it's already changed.
Most important thing your dad taught you?
Most important thing my dad taught me was like to stay positive and stay consistent. You know, take it one step at a time, because even if you got to walk across the street, you still got to make that first step.
How about your mom? Most important thing your mom taught you?
Um, I think one of the most important things my mom, imparted to me is to always be accepting of yourself and your uniqueness, and try to recognize the same thing in other people.
You've always been this mellow?
Yeah.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah. It always was this way, because I mean, even coffee never wired me up either. I have a cup of coffee before I go to bed sometimes. It never stops me from, it never wires me up the way that other people get wired up.
No, but I mean disposition, you're like so even tempered. Like that's really cool.
Yeah, I think I think my outlook was probably formed when I was a kid.
That's great, man. And I just want to tell you congratulations. As you tell me, you've been with your wife 38 years, man. That's very, very cool.
Thank you, man. It just doesn't seem like 38 years.
Right. But some days it may
It
seem
went
like
by
38
so
years.
fast. It keeps going by so fast. But when you find that one person that like totally gets you and can put up with you,
Right, right.
and you can put up with them because they put up with you, it's one thing feeds the other type of situation.
I know how you feel. That's weird when it.
Yeah, you probably got the same thing.
Yeah, 26 years. Yeah, well, I was having this conversation with my wife a little while ago, and I said something about. She said something about, or I think I said something about being 55, and she said, "It sounds really funny hearing you say that." And I said, I bet, because we were kids together.
Wow. So you go
I
back.
was 29. Well, kids, I was 29.
Yeah,
He
right.
was 30.
Yeah.
That's a kid. To me, I mean, I look at my son, he's 29. He's a
I
kid.
know. Ain't that something?
Yeah.
You start looking at like, man, where did the time go? Because
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the same thing happened when I was actually, I had a couple of weeks ago. I was looking through the guitars. I said, okay, I need to take them out every once in a while so I can clean them up. And so I took some of them out and took the first one out that Heritage made. Because Heritage right now has been taken over by, some another company. So I have no idea what the future is going to be. But the thing is my time with Heritage is past, because those guys are now retired. Those are Heritage to me, is those guys.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's like, my time with them is past, and I have no idea what the affiliation is going to be now, with the new people taking over and stuff like that. But it's like I didn't realize how long I had been with them and how old these guitars are, like kids, man.
Yeah.
And my oldest kid for the guitar is like 34 years old.
That's amazing.
That's just amazing to me, because, it doesn't really, time just shoots by so much. And I remember somebody had told me, most of our instruments outlive us. And when I look back, that's just so true. They found Wes Montgomery's guitar that had been in a fire or something like that. And then one of them had been donated to, they have a museum in a park that's named after him in Indianapolis. And his guitar is like in one of the museums and stuff like that. And that guitar is like, how old would Wes have been? You know, Wes would have been like 90 or something like that, or 80 or something like that. But the idea that that guitar is that old.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it?
And it's some out there that's even older than that. The ones that they built before Wes, those are even older than that. So you have to like, man, you can't think about these. You ever see that movie called A Red Violin?
No.
You got to check this movie out, man. It's about this violin that has gone through all of these different owners, and the stories are being told through the perspective of the violin.
Okay.
And it's the most unique movie that you'll ever see. You'll really relate to it like right away because you own your guitars and stuff like that. You'll just be thinking about it like the red guitar. But these, like all of the owners that this violin went through, each one of them had an individual story and relationship with the violin.
That's a cool concept movie, man. I want to definitely.
Yeah, and the movie's being told from that concept. So even I'm thinking about it now, I'm gonna have to dig it out and go watch it again because it was just. I think Samuel L. Jackson was in the star of the movie.
I love him. He's a great actor, man.
Look it up and stuff like that. But he was the one that was. I think he sold his violin. He came in contact with it because he was a broker or something like that. So it was very interesting, though. It's a really good movie.
Any hobbies outside of music?
I escaped playing basketball without getting hurt. Never got my hands but like messed up or anything. Yeah. But I used to use that for an exercise, and that was the thing that I really loved a lot because it was only like maybe 3 or 4 of us that we would go and we would have like 3 on 3 or 4 on 4 games and stuff like that. And we were all older guys, so we weren't being all competitive and nothing like that. We were just trying to get exercise.
Yeah.
And doing that whole court thing gives you like
Oh, you were playing full court?
Yeah, sometimes we'll play full court, and like if it's 4,
you've got to be in really good cardio shape, man.
It was really my lung capacity was really good then, and now I feel like it might be a little bit out of shape now. So I'm going to get back on my bicycle today and try to get my lung capacity back. But that was a hobby that I like playing because every once in a while the gym that we were playing at, all the musicians would come down.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, so we had good times doing it.
In Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Who else did you play basketball with there?
I used to play basketball with the guitar player named Bobby Broom.
I know. I interviewed Bobby. Yeah.
And, Bobby was a really good player.
He's slim. He's in good shape.
Yeah, he used to stay in shape like that. But he's a good basketball player, though. He used to kick my butt all the time. But it was fun anyway because I was out there for the exercise. But him and then a bass player who played his band occasionally too would be in there. He was a really good player too. So I used to just be out hanging out with those guys, having a good time and getting some exercise.
That's cool, man. Yeah, Bobby's a good guy. And last question, man. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been intentional and how much is just a part of aging?
Change in my personality has, I think the biggest change is realizing the difference between my perception of reality now as opposed to my perception of reality 10 years ago.
What do you mean?
Well, for one thing, reality is different because when I slow things down, I can see a bigger picture. But 10 years ago, I was trying to get here where I am now. So you always are going to be looking in retrospect. So 10 years ago, I was your age. And I was thinking about, okay, what do I need to do to think about 10 years from now? And what happened was I started slowing down and finding out that I would reach there faster if I slowed down. So I started slowing down everything, including music and everything else, because I wanted to actually see more of the bigger picture instead of rushing to that 10 years. Through that 10 years, I wanted to actually just take my time through that 10 years.
Thank you, man. Wait, I do have one more. Any regrets?
No, I don't have any regrets, and I can tell you why. Because if you start thinking about regrets, that means that you're living in the past.
Yeah, man, totally.
You can only live in the moment. So even what you did yesterday, you can't have any regrets about, because if you regretted what you did yesterday, you would not be the person you are today.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So no, I haven't regretted anything. I just, observe. And I think that as long as I can observe, I'm going to continue to learn. Now, if I had not learned anything, that would be regrettable.
Touche. Hey man, where are you? I want to talk about, you got some stuff going on with True Fire, but are you playing out anywhere coming up next time soon in the next few months?
I'm always playing out locally here too, but every once in a while I'll, like I'm going out and doing some stuff with my group. Like I have a jazz festival to play in June. It's in Elkhart, Indiana, and it's the Elkhart Jazz Festival. And they've been going on, like, I think maybe 20 years now, something like that. So to be invited to play there with my own group is like is an honor. So we're gonna be there for like 3 days in June.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's coming up, and then I'm gonna be working on my next True Fire projects. The thing that's out right now is
talk about that.
True Fire. What is the thing called? It's called solo trading solos, and then there's another one where we're talking about like the perspective. Like everything's from the perspective of the guitar. But my idea of like how I look at the guitar is, I look at it as being a tool to be able to, get the music that's inside of you out. Think about this. Those guitars behind you that's on the wall, they're just pieces of wood and metal.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no music coming out of them.
I'm with you, man.
When you pick one of them up, that's when the music comes out. So that means that all the while, whatever comes out of them is what's inside of you.
Right, man.
You are the music. You being alive is the music.
That might be a stretch with me, but I get what you're saying overall, the message.
So when I get, like with my True Fire stuff, that I'm trying to get all the guitar players who are out there who maybe thought that, man, if I do it this way, then it's just, so they get really frustrated, because every time that they start thinking about jazz, they start thinking about there's this, like bogged down process that they got to go through to learn anything about jazz or how to play it. And it couldn't be further from the truth. That's not the way all the great players play. They didn't learn how to play that way. They weren't sitting around practicing, scales and things like that. I think I told you before, scales is just the alphabet to a language. If you want to learn English, you're not going to, when you get ready to talk to somebody, you're not going to sit down and recite all of the alphabet.
Right.
That means that what? You got to learn some words. And then you got to learn how to put the words together in sentences to make sense to the person that you're trying to talk to. And then once you can learn some sentences, then you can put sentences together into like a whole paragraph. And once you learn the language, you can say anything that you think about or you want to say. But you can't do that until you learn the language. And so when I talk to guitar players about that, that's the thing that I want them to take away. Why should they, if they learn how to play by, taking a Led Zeppelin record and slowing it down and learning everything that they played on, the guitar player played on or whatever, why would you change that process, your own unique process of learning? Why would you throw that out the window because it's a different kind of music? So once I get them to see that whatever brought them to the table, it stays at the table. You just use that to learn another, another language. But it's your own unique way of learning. It's how you got to be as good as you are.
Are those True Fire courses available on your site?
They are. They will be on my site, but you can go to truefire.com and they're available there. I'm rebuilding my site right now.
Awesome.
Because somebody named Craig told me that I needed to actually get that.
Is it henryjohnson.com?
henryjohnsonjazz.com.
Awesome. So by the time this drops, hopefully it'll be rebuilt. Check out henryjohnsonjazz.com. And also on Facebook, go to Henry Johnson because he posts his gigs out there, and he'll be doing the Elkhart Jazz Festival in June. And if you go out there, make sure you say hello to him. You're a lovely guy, man. I really appreciate you. You're like very calming. I'm just sitting here like absorbing your Zen and shit. And it's like, you're like a very peaceful, calming guy. I wish I had you in my life when I was like 20, man, when I was totally out of control. You would have been like, Craig, breathe. And I would have been like, what? And you would have said it a few more times in a nice, quiet way, and I would have eventually listened.
We would have been buddies from the moment we met.
I think so, man.
You know how you meet people and you automatically feel that link with them?
Yeah.
My first telephone conversation with you was I felt that connection with you immediately.
Yeah, you're like
one of my friends that I've had for all my life.
Well, thank you. I felt the same way. Something about you, I thought I could learn. I said, I even told my wife, I said, I talked to this guy today. I need to pay him more. This guy's really smart. I don't know what it is. I said, he's got there's something about his vibe, I mean, I learned something from everybody, but it was like a guttural thing with you. I couldn't explain it. So thank you very much for whatever you're bringing into the world. And, thank you, man. And I want everybody to check out Henry Johnson's music. And he's got 4 records out, correct? 4 solo LPs?
No, actually 7.
7 records. We didn't talk about it. There's a next record when you come out, you come on the show, we'll talk about it.
Okay, well, I'm going to do that now because it's like really time for me to start putting stuff. It's just, like for me, I'm old school. So, I used to produce all those things and I'd have to write stuff for them and things like that. And now times have changed drastically. So it's going to be easier in the future for me to just put out a record, just say, hey, look, here it is. Or I might put it out 1 track at a time because people seem to really want to go with that. And you can let that 1 track ride for a month or so like that. And then you put another one out. So I think I might pursue that. And maybe actually start my own label because I don't see any point in being with any record label now because we don't actually sell physical products.
Right. I agree with you.
That's sort of like what I've been learning from you is like having to get good business acumen about like what you're going to do. Streaming is just one of those things. That's just a part of our everyday reality now.
Yeah, 100%. Well, man, whenever that comes out, please come back on the show. I'd love to talk about it and turn people onto it. You're a great player. You have a beautiful tone. You have we didn't spend as much time on your music probably as I should have, but he's got a beautiful tone. How you bend notes, I don't understand. I've never heard anybody bend notes like that. And I can't even explain it and articulate it, but it's extremely, I don't even know how, can you explain it?
It's the way that I hear my voice. And so it's like it's just my interpretation of what I hear my voice doing in my head. So it comes out that way. I don't know why it does. It's just that sound that's in my head that comes out on the guitar that way.
Well, don't stop.
The whole thing we were talking about, like mind over matter, it's that thing. That's what I imagine. And so my fingers just try to do whatever to bring that out. And that's just seems to be what happens. I hear it in my head that way.
That's beautiful, man. Keep it up. Not that you're not going to keep it up, right? Hey, man, thank you for everything. I appreciate your time. Hang on. Let me wrap up here and we'll talk again for sure. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thank you very much to Henry Johnson for spending time with us. I certainly appreciate it. Please support Henry's music. Check out his music. He's got 7 solo records. He's got a couple of classes on True Fire. He's going to be doing another one. And they're very good classes. I've checked one of them out on YouTube, actually. I did some, prep work to meet you and for this interview. And he's a deep cat. And that's about it. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com. So sign up on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, right? Go play your guitar and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out.